Hey, y'all, Lindsay here, Fund Fearless Coaching. How do you feel about being vulnerable? For me, it's a pretty scary place to be, honestly. But the one thing that I've really realized about living a more fearless life is that vulnerability is a necessity in order to get there. And oftentimes, the most fear that I experience is around being vulnerable, whether it's speaking my truth on a certain situation or scenario, or standing up for another, or saying no and standing in my power, or saying yes to something. Or what about sharing your feelings, the depth of feelings that you have within? There are so many instances in life where vulnerability is called for. And oftentimes, if we can't be vulnerable, we may never know what the potential outcome or possibility is for us. It's kind of like that age-old adage, like you never know unless if you never try, or you never know until you ask. And so if we're not vulnerable, if we don't share how we're feeling deep down, if we don't take action towards something we truly love or want or care about or feel passionate about, then how will we ever know if it's possible for us? So today I want to talk about 5 benefits really of being vulnerable, although there are multiples. But number 1, deepening connection, not only with others, but within ourselves as well. By being vulnerable, it deepens our connection and builds trust in our relationships. It deepens intimacy. It allows you to go to depths that weren't previously explored. But that also fosters a depth of connection within yourself. It fosters self-love and self-worth. Number 2, it opens a pathway really for others to be vulnerable. So it's kind of one of those scenarios where it's lead by example, or when you open the communication or you open the lines or you share and you are vulnerable, it opens the pathway for others to do the same. So that's a beautiful outcome, that being vulnerable also allows others to be vulnerable as well. Number 3, it's incredibly empowering. And this kind of comes back to this concept of self-love and self-worth. But when we stand up for what we believe in, when we speak our truth, no matter how scary it might feel, or we share our emotions, no matter how vulnerable or terrifying that might be, it's incredibly empowering at the end of it all, because we were authentically ourselves. Unabashedly, unashamedly, authentically ourselves. We stood for what we knew was right, for what we knew we believed in. We shared what was most important to us, no matter how scary it was. And that's empowering. It helps us overcome overwhelming emotions, number 4. So oftentimes life can be filled with intensity of emotions. I don't know if anyone else feels this, but I have those days, where whether it's things going on in the world or things going on in personal life or whatever it might be. And we have a tendency, I don't know, maybe it's a cultural thing, maybe it's not. I don't think it's a cultural thing necessarily from my anthropological experiences, but there's a tendency in life to bottle things up, to hold them within, and to move forward and keep going. And there's a time and a place for that. And I am totally 100% in support of that when it's necessary. But the thing that we have to realize is when we bottle things up, when we hold things inside, eventually in our lives, we have to deal with them one way or the other. They always come to the surface. It may be years down the line, it may be months down the line, but eventually they come. And by the time they come out, usually they're quite a bit more intense than they originally were. So what if We were able to, when we felt overwhelmed by emotion, when we felt overwhelmed by life, when we felt overwhelmed by chaos and things going on around us, what if we were able to just share, to process those emotions, to be vulnerable with what we're feeling, with what we're going through to another, to not bottle things up inside and process it in the moment, so we don't have to process it down the line, so it doesn't have to come out later, so it doesn't influence and affect us throughout life, in years to come, in situations to come, because we were vulnerable enough to dig into it in the moment. Okay, and number 5, it really just opens this doorway for growth, for self-growth, for self-expansion, for self-development, really. Generating self-awareness of being vulnerable and how scary it is, but feeling the fear and doing it anyway, going for it. And so by pushing these boundaries and feeling these fears and opening ourselves up to vulnerability and the connection and the depth that that really can foster, it helps us to grow. It helps us to expand. It helps us up level and get to where we're going next. So I ask you, where in your life, and I'm sure there's something, whether it's in your work or in a circumstance with a friend or a family member, in a relationship, or just with the outside world, where can you be more vulnerable? And how might that benefit you in your life? And trust me, I know it might be freaking scary. I get it. It's terrifying. It's some of the most terrifying. It's like sending that text and your hands are shaking, or speaking up and your voice is shaking, taking action and your legs are shaking. It's terrifying. I get it. But it really truly is empowering, and it is the steps to leading a more fearless life, the steps to the next level of expansion and growth and possibility and opportunity. Act of courage. Where can you be more vulnerable? I encourage you to do it. Go for it. Share with me if you'd like. I would love to hear about it. Wishing you all so much love.